Good evening and welcome to Northbury Academy. My name is Nate Putnam, I'm the head of school here, and I'm thrilled to welcome our candidates. I'm thrilled, of course, to have our students and to welcome our participants and audience here as well tonight. Thank you for taking the time to come here to Northbury Academy, and thank you for your interest, obviously, in this very important topic. Also want to thank the League of Women's Voters of Southeastern Connecticut, of course, our NFA, Young Voters Society, and the NFA's Robert Duncan, NAACP Youth Council, who've worked tirelessly to put this together. And of course, I'd be remiss not to thank Mr. Butler for his hard work on this thing. Really appreciate all the effort, time, and dedication that goes into this, and as well as Ms. Laura Binder for her work on the Young Voters Society. So tonight, students, I'm thrilled that you get a chance to participate in democracy in action, and thrilled that we get to have that here at NFA. So without further ado, thank you very much for the interview.
On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Southeastern Connecticut, the Norwich Free Academy, the NAACP Youth Council, and the Young Voters Society of the Academy, it's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for a debate between candidates for the office of your State Senate District 19 and your State House of Representatives District 46. I am Elise Lowe from Guilford. I'm Voter Service Chair of the East Shore League of Women Voters. I will serve as a nonpartisan moderator for this debate, as I am not a constituent of any of the candidates. The League's appreciation goes to the Norwich Free Academy staff for helping prepare this space, the communications class for the videography, and the students who are serving as timers and those who wrote their questions. Additional questions for the candidates were developed by the local league after listening to members of this community. A good deal of preparation has gone into this debate by many people, and we thank them all for this opportunity to share ideas for how to make the great state of Connecticut even better. To the candidates, we thank you for stepping forward to run for office and for your willingness to participate this evening. Tonight's guidelines will allow each candidate to express their views and to facilitate sharing of ideas. The audience is asked to please withhold applause or other demonstrations until the end of the debate, thereby providing the candidates with more time to express their ideas. The order of speaking was determined by draw and will rotate throughout the debate. Timekeepers will hold up signs indicating when candidates have 30 seconds and 15 seconds left, followed by a stop sign. Please don't stop on a dime, but finish your sentence as quickly as possible. Each candidate will be given equal time over the course of this hour and will have 2 minutes for their closing statement. Let me introduce the candidates. Senator Cathy Osten, Incumbent, is endorsed by Democratic Party, Working Families Party, and Independent Party. Mr. Jason Guidone, Challenger, is endorsed by the Republican Party. The House of Representatives District 46 candidates at the blue table. Representative Derall Wilson is the incumbent, endorsed by the Democratic Party and the Working Families Party. The challenger is Mr. Nick Casiano, endorsed by the Republican Party. We will now start with the opening question. Mr. Jason Guidone will answer first, please. Please share your qualifications for being the district senator, and what would you like to accomplish for this district and the state?
My qualifications are, Cathy, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So qualifications, I am a citizen. I'm engaged in our civic process. I have been trying to make some change in Connecticut through participating in the in the process through whether it be protest, written testimony, spoken testimony, Zoom calls with our legislators, life experience, and interest. I hope to bring Connecticut back to a thriving state. It's currently, as I see it from my 50 years, almost, end of the month. It's gone downhill, and it's gone downhill fast recently. We can flip that around pretty quickly if we get enough people with like interest in office. We've had 30 to 40 years of, unfortunately, I have to label it, Democrat control of our legislative body. They've had majority control for most of that. There was one cycle with fiscal guardrails on it, tax and spend policies, and seemingly staved off that nosedive that we've been heading towards. So I hope to bring Connecticut back to thriving. That's my main mission in Connecticut, because that will solve basically every problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Osten?
Great job at the time.
Thank you very much. My name is Cathy Osten, and I was born right here in Norwich, where my family operated 2 different restaurants and where I worked as a teenager. After high school, I enlisted in the Army, and I served as a sergeant in Japan. After the Army, I worked as a correctional officer in the Department of Corrections for 21 years and retired as a lieutenant. I am now seeking my 7th term in the State Senate, where I serve as co-chair of the Budget Making Appropriations Committee. I think I'm known as a staunch advocate for children, for veterans, and for our Native American tribes, for sexual assault survivors, and for manufacturing here in Eastern Connecticut. If you ask anyone at the state capitol, they'll probably tell you I'm a conservative Democrat that is fiscally conservative on budget matters. And I'm proud to say, relative to the issues of Connecticut small businesses, where I grew up in small businesses, that I have worked wholeheartedly towards decreasing costs for Connecticut businesses. As a matter of fact, one bill that I introduced decreased workers' compensation insurance rates for the last 11 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And the House of Representatives candidates, Mr. Casiano will go first. Same question, what are your qualifications for being the state representative in District 46? And what would you like to accomplish for your district and the state?
Hello, my name is Nick Casiano. I am a Navy vet. I did 5 or 6 years in the Navy, 5 years in Japan, just like Cathy. After getting out, I went to Three Rivers Community College and got my degree in electronics technology. Transferred to Central Connecticut State University and got my bachelor's degree in electronics technology, and then proceeded to get a master's degree in technology management. Currently, I work as a task manager at my company, where I manage multi-million-dollar contracts and ensure that the people who work for me are properly budgeted and funded. So a lot of my job has to do with budgets. My goal, if elected as representative, is to bring a libertarian voice to the state representatives. I'm much more financially conservative, I believe, than a lot of even Republicans. And my ultimate goal is to actually cut spending and reduce the amount of debt that we take on, which is one of the things that we've been that has seriously impacted our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Good evening. My name is Derall Wilson. I'm seeking my 2nd term as a state representative of the 46th District. It has been a pleasure and an honor to serve the citizens of the state of Connecticut and most importantly of Norwich. I am born and raised here in the city of Norwich. I'm one of 9 siblings who has come through many of the systems here in the city of Norwich, through schooling and everything else. I serve 2 terms on the city council here in the city of Norwich, which was a great honor. I serve as a paraeducator at the Integrated Day Charter School. This is my 8th school year there. It is a privilege and an honor every single day to educate our kids. Being a state representative has been nothing short of a blessing to helping put a focus on our families. It has been great being able to bring things back that motivate our families not only to get involved, but to have something. And so over the last 2 years, being able to engage in making Norwich even better than it once was has been a blessing. And in the next 2 years, I hope to continue to do that process as we have some great exciting things happening here in the city of Norwich. So thank you.
Thank you. Next question to Ms. Osten first. What is your highest priority for the Senate to accomplish in the 2025 session?
Thank you very much, and I'm not somebody that can pick out just one general topic because I serve on 7 different committees. I am the chair of appropriations, where I hope to continue to serve in that position, and I'm also the vice chair of public safety. So what I would really like to get done in the next legislative session is an opportunity to bring more resources back to the 5 distressed municipalities that make up this 10-town district. Make sure that they have the resources necessary to complete economic development projects, and to make sure that the resources they have in education are what we need to have to serve all of Connecticut's young people. Thank you.
Mr. Guidone, 90 seconds.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. What is your highest priority for the Senate to accomplish in the 2025 session?
Affordability and safety in our state. So there are many unfunded mandates that come down through Hartford and sit upon the shoulders of our towns, and thereby increase taxes for the citizens of those towns. It's effectively a pass-through tax from our state legislature. That happened with early voting. It was supposed to be funded fully the first year. This is the first year. It is out of money in many towns. Appropriations could have used ARPA money to bolster that, and it chose not to. There are a couple of opportunities within the Appropriations Committee that could have solved, let's say, could have offered some reprieve to our electric bill as well. Pass-through tax called public benefit, which bucketed a whole bunch of things and said, all of you responsible people, you're going to pay for this now, because the folks that couldn't, and we allowed that to happen. Instead of saying ARPA is going to take the burden off of it, and we'll take a simple interest loan for those who benefited from the moratorium, and they will pay that back over time, whatever that looks like in legislation, and as it's hammered out in policy, so be it. But that seems like a more reasonable solution than to say those who are responsible must pay, and those who didn't have, or chose not to have the means during that time, now don't have to pay. So that's affordability takes care of crime. It takes care of a few other things that are motivated by desperation and lack of funds and resources. Thank you.
Ms. Osten, you have an extra 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate what my opponent has spoken about, but I don't think it addresses the question. What are our most important topics to deal with in the next legislative session? And that is education funding and funding for municipalities to make sure that they can meet the needs of the people. I would just say, as an aside, that I've been endorsed by the state police and by the Police Officers Association because I have a clear focus on the safety of all Connecticut's residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, next to the second question for you. What is your top priority for District 46, and how would you address it?
Thank you for the question. So I think going into this upcoming legislative session, one of the major priorities to continue in the 46th district, but primarily Norwich, one of the focuses will be the funding of our school construction project. We've got a $385 million project, and doing our part to continue increasing those reimbursements and making sure that we have that targeted project to complete for our educators, our students, and our families is important. The second piece, I think, is affordability, continuing to bring resources back to the municipality to decrease the burden on our taxpayers, but more importantly, Eastern Connecticut doesn't always get its fair share of resources. And so continuing to be a loud voice in Hartford to make sure that we're able to get the resources to help families, to help seniors, but most importantly, our municipality run smooth is important. So those are some of my priorities for this upcoming session. Thank you.
Mr. Casiano?
So, like I said in my opening, my primary job or belief is to reduce spending and cut the debt burden that we currently have. It's one of the leading drivers on our budget right now. Mr. Wilson brought up that he wants to bring in more funding to school construction, which is another debt. As an aside, Norwich's amount has almost amassed another $750 million in bonding in the last 4 years. And if we talk about affordability, all this debt is just essentially pushing our nice-to-haves now onto our children and our grandchildren. That's what debt is it's a loan against your children's futures. I don't believe in that. We should be paying what we're using now. And if that requires tax increases, then that requires tax increases. But to sell out the future generations for the things that we want now is irresponsible. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think the only point here to continue to make is that there was a task given to us during this last 2-year session to make the burden from the bond that our voters approved before more affordable. So continuing to do that because cost of living is an issue for many. And so I understand that I have to do my part to continue to make that cost of living a little easier for each resident. And that's the goal when we bring the reimbursements up. So thank you.
I'm going to stay with the House candidates for the next question. Should the role of state government in regulating the cost of electricity be changed? And if you think so, how? Mr. Casiano first, yes.
So it's interesting. The electricity bills that we have right now are due to regulations. The increased cost of electricity is due to a mandate required by the state to reduce greenhouse gases by 2030. That has caused us to close our coal plants and essentially made it so we are reliant on millstone, which is what that public benefit is for and what everybody's paying for. It's these regulations and these short-sighted goals without any feasible way of actually accomplishing them that has led to our massive increase in electricity. And the idea that more government would solve that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. What we should be doing is reducing these mandates that we've placed on electricity providers and requiring them to create a public mandate instead of creating more regulations, which will just cause more unforeseen consequences.
90 seconds.
Thank you. So I think, to address the question, I think we're in a unique situation in the 46th District. Having a public utility like Norwich Public Utilities, who, by word, was one of the first to come up with understanding the stress that many of our families are on when it comes to utility bills and creating a community bill. And so I think understanding that the community benefit is not for every single utility company in the state of Connecticut. I think the second part to understand to the question is, it was asking how do we address who should or what should change when it comes to electricity and who should govern over it. I think making sure that the individual legislative bodies have a chance to have a say when Pura and others continue to add on additional increases. There should be somewhere of a middle road when it comes to that. I think understanding the role that government played to get to this point before, we gave that power. We gave that away, and so we are dealing with decisions from that time. And so I think having the conversation where there's a middle road for individuals to say, you know, PIRA and others are approving too many increases at once, and there needs to be a conversation or a chance for the legislature to step in. I think that's important. And so I think that also answers the question.
Thank you. Mr. Casiano, 30 seconds.
So again, this is government influencing private industry that has caused this problem. This isn't deregulation that's the issue. It's actually us creating climate change regulations that have influenced the price of electricity because we are completely reliant on natural gas and Millstone. So again, how would giving government more power over energy production solve that? That's the question, the real question you have to ask yourself.
Same question to Mr. Guidone. Should the role of state government regulating the cost of electricity be changed, and if so, no?
Yes, it should change. How? As Nick stated well, the regulations need to be adjusted to the point where our state is actually capable of performing to those standards. It should be graduated based on what naturally occurs in the market as a response to opportunity in the industry. The requirements that have been set forth by our government to follow the green ordinances are too strict, too soon, and unnatural. It's costly. The windmills, for instance, are being put to task, and they're not as efficient as they're touted to be. Our solar power is not as green as it's said to be. So green energy is not that green as we have it now. Thank you.
Ms. Osten?
Again, thank you very much. So electricity is rather complicated. And to think that there is a pat answer that will deal with electric rates puts false hope out there. So let's talk a little bit about electricity. In the state of Connecticut, 40% of our power comes from a facility called Dominion Millstone. Dominion Millstone has closed down nuclear power plants across this country. And other organizations have closed down nuclear power plants. We needed to make sure that Dominion Millstone would stay here in Connecticut, not only for the 40% of electricity it provides, but the 90% of carbon-free electricity it provides. Back in around 2017, the legislature on a bipartisan basis said that we would save Millstone and we would negotiate a rate that was fair for everyone in that mechanism. And we did. Not only did we save them for the carbon-free and the electricity that they provided, but there are over 3,000 jobs, both direct and indirect, that are good-paying economic drivers in our state. It is important for us to have a long, involved conversation on electricity. Thank you.
30 seconds.
Mr. Guidone, you want an extra 30 seconds?
Thank you. So yes, nuclear power is a fantastic, green, carbon-free energy source. It would benefit us to pursue that over windmills. There's better technology, cleaner technology now than there was when Millstone was put together. It's safer, and it's more efficient. We could produce what we need by pursuing another nuclear power plant over wind or solar farms. What if it hails? Then we have a Superfund site at a solar power farm.
For Question 4 will turn to the students, and you'll probably start with the Senate question first.
Good evening. My first question is directed to Senator Osten. Changes to funding regarding school lunches
I can't
and...
hear you, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to hear you.
Okay, yes. Changes to funding regarding school lunches and meal... Thank you. Changes to funding regarding school lunches and meal programs have greatly impacted students, and during a school budget crunch, this is an area where school districts are struggling to allocate funding. Given how important nutrition is for healthy...
I'm going to interrupt you. I really, can you pull that mic up to your mouth, please? I can't hear you. And I don't want to miss your question.
It was difficult to hear.
Okay. Changes to funding regarding school lunches and meal programs have greatly impacted students, and during a budget crunch, this is an area where school districts are struggling to allocate funding. Given how important nutrition is for a healthy population and the impact malnutrition has on a student's academic success, what remedies or proposals do you feel should be explored to support school districts in terms of funding lunch, breakfast, and after-school food programs?
So I think I got the whole context of your question. Please let me know if I'm wrong. I think that the question was about school lunch and what the funding would be for both breakfast, lunch, and after-school programming. Is that correct? Thank you. So I was very lucky to be able to work on school lunch funding. There is school lunch funding that normally comes from USDA through the State Department of Education. And over the last 2 years, we have been trying to come up with a mechanism to increase school funding, school lunch funding for breakfast, lunch, and after school, so that it would be school lunch for all, or school meals for all children. We're not quite there yet. We provided some American Rescue Plan dollars, both in every year, to increase the funding, and in addition to that, the federal government increased the school funding mechanism to make sure that we were providing meals as in as a large for as many children as possible throughout the whole school year, not only during school but during off times in the summer.
Sounds like a wonderful program. As I understand it, the food that is provided is technically food, but not very nutritious. Pizza, fried cheese, things of that nature. I'm assuming there are some vegetables available. However, the mass-produced food that we have in our system isn't really quality food. So we're serving a meal, sure, and that does help, and I think that's important. But we need to also look at the nutrition that's available within those food items and take a stab at getting really good food into our students and helping them perform better with a clearer mind, without so much garbage in that food and then in their system, which does impact their body and their performance. So I think it's a great program to feed the children who are going to school, and it also makes it so no one stands out who doesn't have the means necessarily to provide their own food from their family. Given the difficult financial times that we currently have in this state, and as I said before, it's based in policy. We could be a thriving state where no one actually needed food assistance. We wouldn't need to actually expand a veterans food pantry because they would be thriving. So we have policy problems. School lunches are great. I hope we get to a point, I plan on getting to a point where they're not necessary to give out.
So I think my opponent would agree with me that the container garden program, which was offered through the American Rescue Plan, provided container gardens if a school so chose to provide leafy vegetables for the school. Container gardens can grow up to 6,000 plants every 2 weeks, providing them to a school district at large, something that would be very important. And I think that having 3 school meals each and every day will help all students, and I look forward to providing those meals each and every day. I hope that my colleague will work with the federal government to make sure that we continue with the regulations providing nutritious meals. Thank you.
Question for the House candidates.
Good evening. This question is directed to Representative Wilson first. As cities and towns across Connecticut continue to be impacted by inflation, housing costs, and a decrease in high-paying jobs, what policies do you believe will best help encourage more entrepreneurs to invest in your district? What areas do you think may have untapped potential for your district?
Thank you for the question first. So I think there are many ways to tackle this. I think first when we're talking from the housing and inflationary perspective, part of that goes to what are we doing to help those that move into our communities, our seniors that are in our communities, the housing stock. And so when we look at it from that standpoint, we've got to do a better job of providing dollars in some of the programs to help those seniors upgrade their homes. One of the things we talk about within a community is a beautiful community is a thriving community, and so allowing them that have stayed there and been taxpayers in a community for a long time is important. I think along the lines of the job training, when we talk about high-paying, good-paying jobs, we've got some of the best individual manufacturers in the region. And so continuing to pour money into job training opportunities for our high school students, for those outside of high school that are looking for a second career is important.
Thank you for the question. So it's simple, it's the economy. Full stop. Inflation was caused by the Federal Reserve, massive amount of money during COVID, and then we also had the Infrastructure Act that was pushed by the Biden administration that led to this massive inflation. Obviously, money isn't free, it comes from somewhere. As for the housing prices, that's basically because of NIMBY policies and regulations put out by the states and cities. It makes it very, very difficult to create large unit housing. And that's what most people who rent need is large unit housing, like multi-unit housing. It's not cost effective when your taxes are going up $2,000. Now, Mr. Wilson was on the town council, and a lot of his policies that he voted for led to the tax increases in this city. So, if you ask why people can't afford houses and why things are expensive, you can, one, thank the Fed for raising the Fed fund rate to offset the inflation that they created, and then you can also thank Mr. Wilson for some of the policies that he voted for that led to some people having $2,000 increase in their property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will say the most important piece here, job training is important. And so we work with Eastern Work Investment and what they're doing to continue to provide training for individuals to work at electric boat, Pfizer's, mobile base, and important places like that. We have an opportunity to continue to do those things. The other part is we look at there are a lot of infrastructure work that is going on in the region, and providing those opportunities are good paying jobs for our communities. And so we must continue to do those things to make sure that they're available for each and every person. Thank you.
The next question will stay with housing, but a different aspect. Does the state have a role to play to expand the available housing for the electric boats planned hiring? We'll start with Mr. Casiano.
Thank you for the question. That's a no. If there is a demand for housing with proper repeal of regulations that make it cost prohibitive for developers to actually build housing, then we would be able to actually build housing that would meet that demand. There's obvious demand for housing. That's why the prices of rents in housing go up, is because people want to buy housing and there's a limited supply. We have to incentivize builders to actually come and build properties and to know that they're going to make money doing so. They already see that, hey, that EV is higher and that people are going to be moving here. Now if we repeal certain regulations and lower taxes so that builders actually can make money, then they will build properties.
Thank you for the question. I think when you look at it, you look at what Norwich has done over the last 2 to 3 years. And it takes a partnership in this journey of building homes, providing housing for electric vote. And so part of that is we've watched the city of Norwich help several developers bring apartment complexes or apartments online to help with that issue. And so I think we can't just say we're going to dump this on our municipalities who are already distressed to do it. And so the state does play a role in helping with some of the programming around dollars to help our developers, but also our municipalities do the work that it takes to get housing up. The other part is it's not just about new housing. Part of it is about doing our part to make sure that the housing stock we do have is ready for the 21st century. And so there's a mixed piece here where as we build and develop housing to help the demand of electric vote, we also have to meet the demands of the aging housing infrastructure that we have in our community. And so the state does play a role in helping with that. It's beyond just regulations. It's us helping with some of those incentives and not dumping the burden on our communities, which are already distressed and doing the work. Thank you.
So to Mr. Wilson's point, who's paying for that? Where does that money come from? Is it more debt? Is it coming from taxpayers? It's shuffling money, essentially. You're taxing somebody's house, and then you're taking that money and you're fiddling around with it, and then you're giving it back to them so they can spend it on, I don't know, making their house more efficient. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If you just let people keep the money that they have and not tax them so they can spend it on the things that they need to do, that would make a lot more sense and be more efficient.
Same question to the Senate candidates. Mr. Guidone first, 60 seconds.
Same question, being,
Yes.
so you want to know if, could you please repeat the question?
Does the state have a role to play to expand the available housing for electric boats planned hiring?
So I'm gonna ring true to what Nick just said. Well, maybe not, but since when is it the government's job to provide housing? It seems a natural occurrence in a market that a developer would provide housing in a necessary capacity when it is needed in an area. So we're taking the free market and we're making it a government market. That is socialism, Marxism. We're moving towards communism, and I don't like that. It's terrifying, actually. It's part of why I'm running. Our policies are take money from the citizens and redistribute it as a government, saying we know better to do with your money than you know what to do with your money. Let the free and fair market be free and fair, and stop taking our money and regulating us out of the market. Basically, government is taking over the free and fair market and saying, this is what you do, and this is what we need, so here you go.
Ms. Osten?
Yes, the government has a role in providing housing options for people, in particular relative to the build-out of workers at Electric Boat. Right here in Norwich, we have Putnam Mills. Putnam Mills has over 300 plus units that received tax credits from the state of Connecticut. And by the way, a lot of the rules and regulations make safe housing. Safe housing is what they needed down in the southern part of the country where rules were not enforced and housing was destroyed in the latest 2 storms that they had down there. The fact is that Electric Boat is hiring 4,500 workers this year alone. That will cover workers that are replacing retired workers or new jobs. They need a place to live. And when I brought the human resources head person from Electric Boat down to Putnam Mills, she used as a recruiting mechanism the beautiful places that we have at Putnam Mills. Now Putnam Mills is expanding again, yet one more time, taking a fallow mill and turning it into beautiful, wonderful housing for people that are working in our area and living here.
Thank you. Reiterate, Putnam Mills is expanding on the taxpayers' dime. It needs to be a free and fair market. It needs to be the people doing the work that needs to be done in their communities. Stop taking responsibility from our communities as though you know better than the people in those communities. We don't need to take their tax money and then spend their tax money the way a government sees fit. The people know better than the government. I would say always.
Students' question, please, for the House candidates. No, sorry, Senate candidates first.
Governor Lamont has made it clear that he wants the CGA to pass legislation to restrict cell phone use in schools. Do you support this initiative? If so, in what way do you think the legislation should be written? If not, why do you think this is not a good initiative?
To,
Senate. Mr. Guidone first.
okay.
We were trying to
No,
figure
I'm sorry.
out which one of us went first.
Yes. So cell phone restrict.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Ms. Austin.
Let's clarify. Oh, Ms. Austin?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
pardon. Yes, there we go.
Take turns.
I'm sorry, we were a little confused on who was going to go first. Both of us.
Indeed.
I think that restricting cell phone usage in schools is a wise thing to do. But I think that the schools know best how to deal with that, and boards of education often come up with policies to control different activities that are going on within the confines of their particular school environment. And I think it also depends on the age of the student. I think grammar school is a perfect time to say no cell phone usage at all. I do think that once you get to high school, it may be appropriate to have some cell phone usage, in particular during your free time. So that's my opinion on cell phone usage.
Thank you. We agree. Look at that. So I'll use the rest of my time to protest the school budgets and the controls that are put in place by the state government that basically says you cannot lower your school budget to any lower than last year's budget. The control, as stated, is better in the hands of the local control. The Board of Education knows what the Board of Education knows and needs, and the school system that they oversee will benefit greatly from a local control. The state has too many strings, I call them nooses, on the money they provide to our systems. You must do this in order to get this. If this place needs money, give them money if it's warranted. Don't take their money in the first place, that would be better. And let them do what needs to be done in a school system. If there's an increase in students expected as it flows through in a bubble in a given year stream, then let that follow that body of students, and let's decrease the lower level grades that have lower students, lower numbers of students. So being able to flow on a local level, you're more nimble and you're more capable of managing your budget. State level controls, as I see it, overall are a problem when they start to press on the machinations of municipalities, cities, and towns. Thank you.
And I'll take my 30 seconds to talk a little bit about school budgets. Last year, we provided schools broadly across the state $150 million in what would essentially bring our school systems up to almost full funding in this last year. That was extremely important for us to do. I think there are always rules governing every school system, and I have no problem having those rules for said school systems. I would also point out that many of the mandates that come down for school systems start off in the federal government and end up costing schools relative to those mandates. Thank you.
A student question for the House candidates.
This question is directed to Representative Wilson. How are your personal values shown in the work you have done and the work you wish to pursue if elected or re-elected?
So thank you for the question again. So I think one of the things that I look at is when getting into politics, one of the things that you always look at is the impact that life experiences have. And so one of the things that I always talk about is I have 3 triplet siblings with special needs. And growing up, you watch your parents advocate on behalf of them because they can't advocate for themselves. And so that's one thing that has drawn me to education, where I work in education, because I understand what it takes for them to have the same opportunity on the same level playing field as I was growing up. And so I think when you look at what we've been able to do in some of those areas of education, that has been a huge thing for me. Understanding the parity and equity that comes in when you talk about educating our youth to have the opportunities to advocate for themselves. And I think for me, that's part of this life's work of making sure that those that don't have the voice are able to continue to do that. So thank you.
So, how my personal values reflect in how I legislate is, I believe in service. My whole life, or my whole adult life, has been in service to this country, whether it be in the Navy or as a defense contractor developing the systems that the Navy uses and the sailors use. I believe in being frugal and respecting people's property, especially taxes. Taxes are better. I think a lot of people misunderstand what taxes are. They're a manifestation of your money, or your time, excuse me. When you work an hour and you make $15, and they take 5 of that, that's 20 minutes you'll never get back in your life that you have to give to the government. And to me, wasting that money is wasting your time, something that's precious and you can never get back. We have to be mindful of that. And that's one of my guiding principles. Whenever I look at a budget line item or any kind of spending, it's, is this in the best interest of people and their tax dollars? And if it's not, it has to be a no.
Thank you. I think the other big piece for me, when you look at what guides you, is that if I can't take the point of disagreeing with another individual and understanding where their point is, then you're in the wrong business. Making legislation great takes you having conversations with those on the other side. And so I think when we do things the right way in the state legislature, it's listening to both sides. And so I think for me, that's one of those life's experiences of listening to the other side and taking what they have to make legislation great and compromise. Thank you.
Next question to the House candidates first. Mr. Casiano. Criminal justice is a matter of concern for many state residents. What do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the Connecticut justice system, and what might you suggest to improve it?
One of the biggest weaknesses is not enforcing the laws as they're written. One of my big flags that I raise is that I'm a pro-gun advocate. I know that's not a lot of people, but I believe in that. And here's the thing is that we don't enforce the gun laws that exist right now. Just this last summer, 2 individuals were arrested, 19-year-olds. They had illegal firearms, and they got a slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, they would charge somebody like me for not properly registering one of my firearms and send me to jail. It's this selective prosecution. The law should be blind, and the law should be evenly applied. Something that hasn't been happening, and I believe that a lot of the people who are on the west side of the aisle, but actually probably agree with that. A lot of things so that's one of the things that I would like to see.
So I think when you talk criminal justice, I think part of this goes with what we are trying to get at, which is mainly is a huge piece of prevention. And so part of that is looking at what is out there to, one, stop an individual. And we have to look at, what's in a community. And so we look at the opportunities that continue to persist in a community, both artistically, athletically, in many different areas, artistically. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, part of it is prevention. I think the other part is looking at the accountability or holding individuals accountable, as my opponent has said, for some of the crimes they commit. Does that mean we slam the book at them every single time? No. But I think we have to hold our state's attorneys and those that run the criminal justice system accountable for weighing crimes differently. And so that means having some conversations, not only with legislators, but also those doing this on the day-to-day basis, to make sure that what we're doing or what we have in place is not just about solving and fixing crime, but also the rehabilitation and the recidivism of an individual coming back into the community. Because we can give an individual a sentence, but what happens when they do come back into the community? What are we doing on our side of rehabilitating them to actually be productive citizens in our community and stopping prevention?
To Mr. Wilson's point, when it comes to prevention, it comes down to the economy, in all honesty. When you look at the economy in recessions, you usually see rises in crime right after, or that lag. So one of the biggest preventers of crime is a robust economy, which has not been delivered by the Democratic Party, neither nationally or at the state level.
Senate candidates, the same question. Mr. Guidone first.
Thank you.
What criminal justice is a matter of concern for many residents. What do you see as strengths and weaknesses of the state system, and what can be done to improve it?
There are many things that can be done to improve our criminal justice system. One thing that we could do in short order is reinstate the police. So the Police Accountability Bill took away the, good Lord, what is it called?
Qualified immunity.
Thank you. The qualified, thanks for helping me out on this. The qualified immunity. So qualified immunity is you did your job by the letter of the law, you did your job by the standard of your job, right? So you followed every rule. And you are protected in so doing. that was removed in the Police Accountability Bill, or however, whatever the actual name of it is, in about 2020. So since then, there's been a decline of interest in policing. There's been a decline in basically on-the-job performance as a result of hesitation in fear of personal accountability for doing your job right.
Thank you. There's a lot going on in the criminal justice system, and a lot that's going on has relative to do with the policies that we pass in the legislature. My colleague would like to point out one part of the Police Accountability Bill. That one part has found to bear no merit on it, and if you looked at today's police, they are actively interested in doing their job. I have yet to find a police officer who does not want to do their job. They love their job. They think it's important, and they are actively interested in working with the community to make sure that the laws are enforced for the safety of the community, but also to work with our young people to make sure that they don't get involved in a negative way with the police departments. I've been endorsed by the State Police Union and by the Police Officers Association because they appreciate what we have done in the legislature. The Juvenile Justice Policy Committee in the General Assembly has been working actively, not just with the police, but with the State's Attorney's Office to make sure that the policies that are being enforced are enforced in a uniform way, but mostly to make sure that young people do not get involved with our criminal justice system in a negative way. I point out that we have the lowest crime rates nationally across the board in many areas.
I agree. Police are interested in doing their job. They're hamstrung by that piece of legislation and that part of that legislation. They also need the funding, the staffing, and the training to do their job. They need the support. We need more men and women on the streets to support their communities. We need that for public safety, our sanctuary state status. Once the money runs out for our illegal guests, crime will be rampant because they will be desperate.
This question is directed to Senator Osten. Where do you stand on the push to require electric vehicles? Do you believe that this is something the state should require or not?
Thank you. Actually, I have been very firm in saying that that should not be a mandate. I sit on the Regs Review Committee, and I push back on the administration to deal with electric vehicle purchase on a free market basis. To do that, I also think that there are a number of other policies that have to be addressed. So I looked at the country of Norway. The country of Norway has gone about 80% electric vehicle usage. But they said, don't make the same mistakes that we made. One of those mistakes they made was not having enough public transportation. And we need more public transportation, in particular in Eastern Connecticut, where we don't have public transportation that's easily used by many residents across the board. I also said that it's not fair if we create a divide between the haves and the have-nots. And I don't think that it's wise for us to provide grants for people to get electric vehicles when they can afford to buy a vehicle above $70,000. They don't need our money. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with that. So yes, it should be a free and fair market. We should not be forcing anything on our constituents. It should be a consumer-driven market, period, full stop. Why we're spending $80 million on infrastructure for electric vehicles, I do not know. Let's throw that at Eversource and United Illuminated to take off that public benefit burden that we all have on our shoulders, except for you in Norwich, who have their own utilities. God bless you. So, no. No is the answer to that. And and we can get into consumer choice, market supplies, that it's just everything. We should not be shoving decisions down the throats of our people from the state legislature. Cathy and I agree on this particular item. I don't know, Cathy, if you've introduced amendments to that police accountability bill to make adjustments for that over the course of years since 2020. I know you spoke vehemently against it, and then you voted for it, so I don't know where the gap is in that particular piece of legislation. There's also cost sharing that's going on in the state of Connecticut for education, and that seems to be trying to homogenize our state to some degree, which isn't a free and fair market. It's a bit out of form.
Back to electric vehicles. So electric vehicles, I think, is a mechanism that we will be seeing increasing. And if you talk to most car dealerships, they're seeing an increased buying of electric vehicles. I think that naturally that will continue to occur. But I think that we have to make sure that we are doing a number of things in conjunction with that. And I gave both the administration and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection 22 items for them to look at relative to electric vehicle purchase and electric vehicle usage. Thank you.
Is there a student question for the House candidates? Mr. Wilson first.
What do you believe the role of the state is in connecting your district's residents with healthcare facilities to meet their non-emergency health needs?
So I will say, when you look at the role of government when it comes to that, it goes back to the point of resource. So we look at in Eastern Connecticut, it's tough to find a doctor in many specialties. When we look at that, we look at where mergers have taken us, where an individual may have to go New Haven and Hartford Way to get the services they need. And so I think part of it is having, our role is having the conversation of doing our part to make sure that the resources are staying within our region, that we are also enhancing those resources. And so that's the huge part to the gap, where we're looking at doctors' offices leave the region and individuals having to find new doctors well outside of the travel range for many individuals. And so when we do our part to bring that resource back in to the region, incentivize doctors to come back into the region, we will see the decrease of individuals going to non-essential visits of the emergency room and urgent care.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the health insurance industry is the most regulated industry in the United States. You have Obamacare, you have all these different state and federal regulations that make it very difficult for insurance companies to operate. If you know the history of why insurance companies are tied to your employer, it's very interesting. You should probably go look it up. So the role of the state, they've already got their hands into it. And this idea that we should give them, again, more power over such a giant industry seems kind of crazy to me when they've already messed it up so bad for the last 70 years. So a proper solution would be something that Oklahoma City did, where they had cash-only surgery, and they didn't have insurance, and that the doctors charged the actual cost of the insurance, and suddenly an epidectomy, that's our word, was only maybe $5,000. When the free market is allowed to operate as it does, prices come down. When the government interjects itself into the free market, prices always go up.
So I think relative to the question, I think the biggest part here is providing opportunity for individuals to have better options. Better options with where their doctors are. And so when we talk about availability, it comes also down to that resource piece of public transportation, getting to and from a doctor, and also the part of the reimbursement rate that the doctor is going to get. And so when we look at where the other parts of the state have readily accessible opportunities for doctors, we've got to do our better part of advocating for more doctors in the region so that that cost can come down as people have better options. Thank you.
Students, do you have one more question for the House candidates?
There has been an ongoing discussion regarding adding tolls on Connecticut highways. Are you in favor of this or not, and why?
Is it on my first?
That is a resounding no, unless we remove all the other taxes that are attached to gas. Tolls are actually a great way of mitigating for electric cars, because electric cars have used gas, so they're not paying gas tax, which is a big chunk of what funds the roads. So it's a no if we don't get rid of the gas tax. If we got rid of the gas tax and then we use tolls, that makes sense. Now the individual is paying essentially a usage fee every time you drive the road, and you end up paying for what you actually use, which is a fair way of paying for something.
So I would say it's a no, but I think the other part to the tolls conversation is the government, the legislature, taking a look at other taxes. I think one of the reasons why this has become more of a persistent conversation is we look at those that use our infrastructure day in and day out to pass through. And those large freights and trucks that are constantly beating up our bridges and roadways take an impact. And as taxpayers, we foot the bill for them being repaired. And so I think while tolls may not be the answer, there has to be a larger conversation as to how we address the pass-through of many others from the states around us. Specifically, you look at New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and even Massachusetts. And how we do our part, one, to continue to upgrade our infrastructure, but also those that are coming and passing through our state to do business in other states, and even business here in the state. So thank you.
To Mr. Wilson's point, Rhode Island has tried to do an individual toll for just trucks. That's currently being litigated, I believe, in the Supreme Court, so we don't know if that is technically constitutional. But like I said, it would just come down to eliminating the gas tax and then we could have tolls. But I highly doubt that the government would give up a funding source, so they would probably try to keep the gas tax and tolls, which would just put a greater burden on drivers.
Do you have a question for the Senate candidates? Last question before closing statements.
Thank you.
This question is directed to Senator Guidone. Busing is another area where schools are facing budget shortfalls, which has resulted in more students walking to school in crowded buses. What do you believe is the role of the state in providing for more busing and for safe pedestrian walkways, given the increase in students walking to school?
So the municipalities would know better what to do as far as busing goes and request funds from the state as needed, as proved out. That would be where are there sidewalks, where are there not sidewalks, what are the drop-off zones, what's the walk distance and the safety involved in that. There are a lot of things to consider as far as busing goes for our students, and I think it's important that we consider their safety, whether it be physical safety from vehicles or physical safety from predation, because there's a problem with that in Connecticut and throughout the United States as well. More so since we are a sanctuary state, we have unfiltered, unvetted people here now that could potentially be a threat to our children, and that's a huge problem, and a huge potential problem at minimum. And I think we need to cross party lines and have those conversations. And I'm going to throw an attack jab here on my colleague who stated on the floor that said, we don't take amendments, suggestions from Republicans.
not really sure what my colleague is talking about, either when he talks about sanctuary cities or the fear that people from different countries coming into our country are an awful thing. Norwich is always has had a large educational problem, generally speaking, because it's a pre-K to 8 in its Norwich public school systems with a wonderful high school here at NFA. But many schools get to ameliorate the whole cost of their school system through the continuum of education, and that's not what happens here. Most recently, the superintendent of the Norwich Public Schools made a decision to adopt the standard, actually less than the current standard. If a student is within 2 miles of a school, they allow that student to walk to school. They dropped it down to 1.5 miles, and felt that with the preponderance of the number of sidewalks that are in the city of Norwich, that was safe for both the student and for the community. I think it's a learning curve, and I do think that the city needs some additional sidewalks in certain areas, and I do believe that should be handled relative to the municipality, not the school system. I think they need to work together on how we're going to handle the school safety walking situation.
So the safety issue came up while I was knocking doors. It's a real thing. I was invited into a Haitian family's home, a multi-generational Haitian family's home. Had a great conversation with those folks, and they insisted that there's a problem with safety in our communities. That includes our children walking from place to place, whether it be from school drop-off zones or not. I also spoke with a 9-year-old who was walking down the street, coming home from school, coming off the bus. Her mother said, yes, that's a problem in Norwich, and that's human trafficking issues. So we have a problem. Let's address it.
Thank you all for answering the questions. And now we're moving to the closing statements. Each candidate has been offered 2 minutes for their closing, beginning with Mr. Guidone.
So I can spin off of that particular statement where public safety is a very real issue. And as I said in the content of this debate, police are critical in the solution. A thriving community, a thriving economy, and a free and fair market in Connecticut will help resolve the crime issue. It will help resolve, of course, the affordability issue. Taking pressure financially off of families has this cascade effect in communities. Less crime, less suicide, less of the family disputes, we'll call it, where police have to come out and take care of things. So there's far less pressure when there's a thriving economy, far less crime, of course. We have public safety in numbers of our police force. When we support them, we support a thriving community and a safe community. They want to do their jobs, as Ms. Osten said, and they want to do them well, and we need to support them in that. I intend to bring cross-party lines conversations to find these solutions for a thriving Connecticut. We need to reduce the tax burden, we need to reduce the unfunded mandates on towns, who will then reduce your taxes if they're a good body of governance in your local communities. So that's more money in your pocket, and safer communities along the way. That's a natural progression of things as far as those simple things, those levers and knobs that we pull make a better community to live in. You can decide where to put your money. If you think it needs to go to a soup kitchen, give it to that. Go work at that as well. If you think it needs to go somewhere else, put it there. The government does not know better to do what to do with your money in your community than you do yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Cathy Osten, and I've been honored to be the state senator for the 19th district for the last 12 years. And I've done a wonderful work in cooperation with all of the people in the legislature. 80% of the bills that we pass are passed on a bipartisan basis, and approximately 10% of the rest have some debate that goes on, and we may disagree on about 10% of our policies. That's it. We agree on almost everything in the General Assembly, whether we're a Republican, a Democrat, or any other party affiliation there. That's just a fact. Relative to the city of Norwich and the surrounding communities, I have been honored to be the chair of appropriations. As such, I developed a policy that brought what is called Project Longevity right here into the city of Norwich, and we work with a team which includes the local police department, local human services department, so that we can get services in for young people and their families to make sure that they have their issues being addressed. And that is those that might be victims of any crime, but also might be perpetrators, to turn that issue around so that we can get young people working together. I have been honored to bring to this community policy changes that have helped out Norwich in economic development. By providing money for the manufacturing pipeline here in this city, which has given some 5,000 people an opportunity to work in our manufacturing broadly, whether it's a subcontractor for one of our defense industries or the defense industries themselves. I am honored to represent you, and I am asking for your support as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Mr. Casiano.
So, I'm just going to start with the economy here. Connecticut's in a lot of debt, and it keeps getting larger. My opponent proposed 15 bills in 2024 that would increase the debt to the bond. The Democrats have hung their hat saying that they created a surplus in the last budget, but that was all with the debt. They basically just took money out on a credit card and said that they had a surplus. As for criminal justice reform, Mr. Wilson co-sponsored House Bill 05331, which was to stop suspending licenses for infractions if you didn't pay the bill or had too many points. As for the issues with the electricity bills, my opponent sponsored House Bill 5004, which was more climate change policies. As I stated before, one of the driving reasons why the cost of the increase was the dependence on millstone, because we had to get carbon down per that law. More of those laws are going to just end up costing people more for their electricity. And when electricity goes up, so does everything else you buy. We talked about why doctors have left the city. And one of the things is Medicare. Doctors who take Medicare get paid pennies on the dollar. It's not cost effective for them to be here. And we incentivize people who have lesser means to be here, and that's not a bad thing. But the problem is they aren't able to pay what the actual cost is for services. And it causes doctors to leave. And essentially, what this is leading to is a death spiral for Eastern Connecticut. As taxes go up, and industries leave, and doctors leave, and everything else, we get to the point where we start looking like my hometown of Buffalo. And we don't want that actually.
So first I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out and listening to each and every one of us. Whether we agree or disagree on issues, it's important for you to hear us. I want to thank the students, I want to thank NFA, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for your time and allowing us to have this constructive conversation. It's important, and it was an honor to serve this first term as your state representative of the 46th District. We look at where we've been and where we're going here in the city of Norwich and the things that we have been able to do successfully here to make the city a better place. I've been fortunate to be a part of what we are bringing here to the community through the Community Investment Fund. We talk about bonding dollars being a hamstring or a problem, and I look at what we've been able to develop here in the city of Norwich. The marina is moving in the right direction. In my area of town, Greenville, the Cape Art Mill will be demolished soon and will bring about more development in an area of town that needs it. We've watched the city continue to be partners in bringing economic development opportunities to this community. A distressed municipality can only continue to build itself and continue to grow with voices in Hartford that are going to bring the resources here. No matter what socioeconomic status you are here in the community, I've been fortunate enough to be one of those individuals to voice whatever concern. If I am re-elected in November, will continue to be a voice across the aisle. As I said before, no great legislation does not come without having conversations with the other side. And so I thank each and every one of you for allowing me to serve, and I ask for your support on November 5th. Thank you.
Now you may applaud. And thank you not only to the candidates, but to you, the audience, for being so polite and paying close attention to their answers. I'd also like to especially thank the students for their questions and their timekeeping. You did an excellent job. I invite you all to please visit the lobby to learn more about the League of Women Voters and to speak with their candidates. And finally, I'd like to remind you to vote on the referendum question that will appear on each and every ballot. It has to do with no excuse absentee ballots for the future. When you go to vote on or before November 5th, remember to vote on that question. And just note that early voting begins next Monday, October 21, and will run for 14 days. And if you visit your town's website, you can check on the venue and the specific hours. I thank you now and say goodnight.